Okay, I am back and we are ready for the very last step. So as you can see, I've got this whole blanket knitted up, and I reached a point that I probably don't have enough yarn for 2 whole more rows. So I'm going to just call it here and cast off. So this is almost identical to every row that you've done up to this point with one little change. So let me show you how it's done. When you're done with this last row, it is ready for snuggling. So like usual, you're going to do your first stitch just normal. Grab your yarn, drop your hoop, and slide onto your other hand. Second stitch, same deal. Okay, this is where it gets different. So as soon as you have 2 stitches on your right hand, or if you ended on the opposite row, then you just need to reverse it, so it'd be on your left hand. It doesn't matter which end you bind off, which arm you bind off on. But as soon as you have 2 stitches on the new arm, you want to go back, grab the first one, slide it over the first one, and slide it over the second one and just drop it. And all this does is it keeps it from unraveling. You're basically kind of locking in each stitch on the stitch behind it, piggybacking it so that it doesn't unravel. So now all you need to do is get back to having 2 stitches on your right hand. So hold the yarn, pull it over, slide onto your wrist, grab the one farther back, pull it over the new stitch, and drop it. Add a second stitch, pull over and drop it. Add another stitch. These I tend to do a little bit tighter than I did the rest, just so that you don't end up with like really crazy loose loops on your last row here. That is all there is to it. Knitting is not as hard as it looks. So just remember at all times you should never have more than only on the bind off row, you should never have more than 2 stitches on this arm. If you ever get to that point, you need to back up and go back and remember to slip stitches over the next stitch before you move on. So it probably took me about an hour to knit this whole thing when all was said and done. So that's really not too bad to have a cool snuggly blanket or a pretty nice gift to give somebody. And I was pleasantly surprised this stuff shedded less than I remembered. Maybe it's improved, or maybe this is slightly different yarn, so maybe this just is not so hairy, but it didn't leave as many dust bunnies all over my pajamas as the stuff I remember from last year. So that's good. Okay, so we're down to the last stitch here. Okay, so you're going to pull that over like normal, and you have just now your final stitch left on your right arm, and all you do here is you're going to find the end of your yarn and pull the whole end of the yarn all the way through and tighten it, and that makes a little knot. Okay, so then you can stretch it out. Then don't pull too tight because these fibers can tear. I actually had one tear in here. I had to knot it back together. But that's it. Now you've got a blanket, which is so fun. But the one last thing you're going to want to do is take your ends And I'll show you on the beginning. And you should have two tails of yarn, one at the beginning and one at the end. And when you knit with smaller yarn, I usually end up hiding my ends with a needle and weaving it in and out. But with this big yarn, I just use my fingers. Let me get this where it's visible here. Okay, so what I do is I kind of just try to twist it along the pattern. So what you don't want to do is like weave it in and out where it's real visible on the front side. So I kind of try to tuck it behind stitches, but at some point you're going to kind of want to split the fibers in a stitch and kind of slide it in and out. It just kind of helps it snag so it won't get pulled back out. Your goal here is to hide it, so you don't want to have to tie a big giant knot. You want to hide it, but snugly so that it stays tucked in and you don't wind up. It's not the end of the world if it comes untucked, you just retuck it, but it's just kind of unsightly to have tails everywhere. So I just kind of split previous stitches and just wind it through until I think I have enough split that it won't come undone. Another thing you can do is split the stitch you're trying to hide and then go a couple different directions with it. It makes it a little thinner, so it's a little bit easier to kind of just tuck into other stitches without it sticking out and looking funny. On the other end, I've got a lot longer tail, so I'll cut that down so that only probably 6 inches or so are left to tuck in. I won't tuck in the whole tail, just enough to get a good run at it so that it's not going to immediately just fall back out. And I think 6 inches is probably plenty. There you go. So I've got it all kind of tucked in, and from the back, you can't really tell. From the front, you definitely can't tell. And then you do it to the other side, and you are all done.